Hi everybody, my name is Radha Selvester and I'm the Alachua County Chapter Chair for Days for Girls International. I want to tell you our story because today is December 23rd of 2019. In 2 weeks I'm about to have surgery to remove a malignant tumor that is in my thyroid that has spread to my lymph nodes, esophagus, trachea, and vocal cords. So I wanted to make sure this story was told and everybody can hear it. So you ready? Here we go. I'm in the studio right now with Pamela Coons, who is in charge of and runs the At the Wellness radio and TV network. And I'm also here with Sherry Dar, who is a longtime friend and was the mother of one of the Girl Scouts that helped to start this project in Alachua County, Florida. So here I'm going to just jump right in. Days for Girls International was started by Celeste Mergens in 2008. She was helping at an orphanage in Kenya, and she'd brought stoves that could now cook the food with using only 2% of the amount of fuel that they used to use. So saving a ton of money, so there's more money for food to feed the orphans. And one night it kind of came to her mind to ask the question, what happens to girls when they have their period? And the answer was nothing. They would sit on a piece of cardboard on their bunk bed and just wait for this period to go away. They would miss school, they would miss meals. They were really lucky if one of their friends came along and brought them water. It was just a really terrible situation. So Celeste did what any American, she's from Washington State, what any American would think of: let's collect money and let's buy sanitary napkins for these girls. So the girls, they did that, and that lasted for a couple months. And these disposable pads, like we use in America, were given to the girls, and after a couple months, the latrines were just overflowing. There were piles of used pads all over the place. Some of the girls would roll up the pad and put it into the chain link fence for lack of a better place to put it, and women were walking by to take them out of the chain link fence, wash them out, and use them again. And she said, that's horrible. We need to make a change, and that's how Days for Girls was started. We needed a solution that was reusable, washable, sustainable, hygienic, and this is how Days for Girls started. So that was in 2008. In 2013, my co-leader, Darlene Perkins, and I were running a Girl Scout troop. We had like high school age, some middle school girls in the troop at the time as well. And we had done a lot of different projects, and now it was time we were going to start our Mission Sisterhood journey. If you're into Girl Scouts, journeys are something where you discover something new, discover something new, connect with others, and take action to make the world a better place. So for their Mission Sisterhood journey, they decided to do this Days for Girls project. But just to back up a bit, how that even happened was we had a guest speaker on Labor Day of 2013 named Dr. Jacob Atem. At that point, he was still a PhD student at UF. He was one of the lost boys of Sudan. And he had endured horrific things from the age of 5 to 15, wandering around Kenya, being a refugee, not having food to eat, not having a place to live, losing your family, just horrible stuff. And then when he was about 15, the United States said, we will take 3,000 refugee boys from, they were called the Lost Boys of Sudan. So he came to America and started his education at 15. And it was pretty impressive that in 2013 he was actually finishing his PhD. He now has his PhD because this is 2019. Anyway, so Jacob was our guest speaker in our Girl Scout troop. And at one point, he was telling us all the stories of his childhood and what's going on in South Sudan at that time. Now, well, at that time it was 2013. It was a brand new country, and just said a lot of different things about developing a new country. His wife was actually working there at that time. So at some point, he said something about girls dropping out of school around 5th grade. And we all looked at him like, what are you talking about? Why would girls drop out of school around 5th grade? And finally, it came out, they hit puberty, they have nothing to manage their periods, so they stopped going to school. So we had a new Girl Scout in our troop at that time. Her name was Emily, and she had come from Colorado, and she had heard about making reusable, washable menstrual supplies. None of us had ever heard of such a thing in Florida. And she jumps out of her seat and she says, I know what we can do. Let's make reusable, washable menstrual supplies so we can help the girls in South Sudan stay in school. And we looked at her like, all right, whoa, this was just so out of the box. We had never thought of such a thing. And then I looked around, the girls said, yeah, let's do it, let's do it. So they all decided that we're gonna do this project, and this little Girl Scout troop, Troop 733 in Alachua, Florida, the little city of Alachua, Florida, is going to make an impact in an entire country in Africa. So that was what their plan was. And so I looked around the room, I said, girls, okay, if you really wanna do this, that's fine, we'll figure out how. I just always encourage them to come up with ideas. And they said, I said, okay, so who knows how to sew? And I looked around the room, and that deer in the headlight look like, oh, okay, so we need to take this backwards a step and teach the girls how to sew. I reached out to the American Sewing Guild, and this awesome woman named Bev Hilton was the chairman. She's since passed away of cancer, but she was the chair of the Gainesville chapter of the American Sewing Guild. She said, this is a great idea, we'll partner with you, we'll teach the girls how to sew. One of those Sewing Guild ladies knew about Days for Girls, because Emily's mom and I were just gonna figure something out. We're gonna make it up, we're gonna come up with some kind of reusable, washable system. And Barbara Cannon was her name, and she said, no, just use what Days for Girls is doing. So we started using their patterns. So we held our first sew-a-thon in December of 2013. We did it at a church, and we had a partnership between my teenagers and the older ladies from the Sewing Guild, and we worked all day, and we worked hard, and we stayed focused, and at the end of the day, we had exactly nothing done that was useful. That's how bad it was. We were just really bad at sewing. I mean, I'm a good seamstress, but it was hard. There's a lot of detail to making these Days for Girls items. So we worked at it, but the girls said, no, we're not gonna give up. They had set a goal of producing 200 Days for Girls International hygiene kits. We somehow thought we could do that in a day. No, not gonna happen with people who don't know how to sew. Yes, Sherry was there. Sherry's in here with me. Her daughter was in the Girl Scout troop when we started that. So she's my audience right now. If she chuckles in the background, you'll know who she is. So we get to the end of the day, we have nothing done, and the girls said, we don't wanna give up, let's keep going. So we wound up having 5 more sew-a-thons over the next 6 months. And we had all kinds of older ladies helping us. There were certain parts that were really difficult. There's a part where you have to serge, and we didn't have a serger. There's a part where you sew, and it's kind of curvy, and the girls could not do those curves for anything. We really struggled, but there were some parts that were easy, and they could do all of that. So I remember one lady in particular who was helping us. Her name's Marguerite, and she was 87 years old at the time, so she's in her 90s now. She had bad knees. She couldn't come to any of our sew-a-thons, but she said, I love this project. I really want to make it work. How can I help? So I would drive to Micanopy to drop off like piles of sewing supplies. Here, can you serge all of these? Can you just sew the curves, and my girls will take it from there? And she was so sweet. At the end of helping us for many months, she made everybody earrings. So I like to wear these when I do my presentation. This is my earrings from Marguerite. So if you get to watch this, there you go. So anyway, we met our goal. In May of 2014, we had produced 200 Days for Girls International hygiene kits. Along the way, the girls had written a PowerPoint presentation to gather support. What a learning experience for these girls. They wrote a PowerPoint and educated people about the reasons why we need to have Days for Girls International. We need washable menstrual supplies. We need something that is sustainable, because producing all of this paper goods is just making more trash. And so this is what they found out, that girls in developing countries, when they don't have what they need for their menstruation, they're going to use all kinds of very unhygienic things. It could be the stuffing out of their mattress, it could be torn up rags, it could be paper, it could be cow dung, put a rock inside to try to block it from coming out, all kinds of things, and then the girls would get reproductive tract infections. Or the girls would just say, the heck with this, I'm just not going to go to school, because I'm just embarrassed that if I leak, somebody's going to laugh at me, it's going to be a problem. So if they don't go to school for a week every month, chances are they're going to drop out. They're not going to be able to finish. And I say this to all the UF students when they come in. I usually have a lot of young ladies come in to volunteer. Would you have made it to the University of Florida as a college student if you had missed a week of school every month? And of course, no. So imagine what that does to a young girl who's basically, usually you start your period in middle school, you're gonna miss a lot of school. So if you drop out, you're likely to get married off at a young age. In some countries, like in Kenya, they have a dowry system where the boy's family pays the girl's family. And if you had a girl at home who's 13, 14 years old and she's not going to school and she's not working, it would make financial sense to get her married off and get that dowry so that your family is more self-sufficient. The dowry could be paid in cows or it could be paid in money or whatever, but somehow or another your daughter is a financial asset if you can get her married off. If that's not happening, there's also traffickers, and we know human trafficking is a huge issue around the world, but specifically for girls who are not in school, the traffickers will come along and they'll go talk to the parents and they're like, oh, I have a job for your daughter, let me take her to Mombasa, we'll get her hooked up, she'll send you money every week. And then she's sold off into prostitution. You never hear from her again, and her life is totally ruined. But I think the worst thing that happens, and this, I know people for whom this has happened, male teachers, sometimes relatives, sometimes taxi drivers will tell a girl, I have what you need. I have pads in my office. I have pads in my taxi cab or whatever. All you have to do is give me sex in exchange, and I'll give you pads. And so those poor girls either end up pregnant or they end up with HIV. And if you come to our sewing center now, you will see pictures of some young ladies who had babies at 13, 14, 15 years old. We have a picture of one young lady who is a big Days for Girls advocate, but she's HIV positive because of her teacher and was kicked out of her home at 14 because of testing positive. So raised by another great lady in Kenya also. I don't want to mention names right now. So this is what we learned, and my girls made an amazing PowerPoint presentation. I did edit it a little bit for typos and stuff, but they did a great job explaining all the reasons why a washable menstrual solution is so important. That presentation, they gave it a dozen times, some to UF groups and some to adult service organizations like the Lions Club or Kiwanis and things like that. And people just started giving us money and donating underwear and donating the washcloths and donating the little bars of soap that we need to make the kits. And so much so that eventually the Girl Scouts said, you got way too much money coming and going out of your troop account. You're going to need to separate Days for Girls. And that's when we eventually became a team with Days for Girls International. So going back to 2014 in May, we finished our 200 kits. We are so excited. We're cheering. We did this in a library. We're like, yes, we did it. Yay, yay. Now we're going to go. We called Richard Tovar and Carol Thomas, who are teachers at Santa Fe College, and said, okay, we got the kits ready. When are you going back to South Sudan? They were supposed to go over the summer break because they're instructors. And they said, oh, wait, we can't go back to South Sudan. Last time we were there, they were shooting at us. They were there over Christmas break, and basically the Civil War had started. But of course, when that first shot is rung, you don't know that that's going to be a war, but it turned into a war. So over those 6 months while we're sewing and putting the kits together and really working hard, the whole country had devolved. There were 1 million displaced South Sudanese people. Going to school was the last thing on anybody's mind. You're just trying to survive. So we were like, oh, wow, we made these 200 kits. We were talking about South Sudan for the last 6 months. Like, now it's not going to happen. So those 200 kits sat in my living room in my tiny apartment, and it was an obstacle course, climbing over all these boxes of Days for Girls kits. But we just kind of sat on the project for a couple months. And then I get a phone call from my co-leader, Darlene Perkins. Guess what? My cousin's pastor's wife's brother is coming from Kenya. It turns out he's the governor of a very small rural place called Tarakaniti, Kenya. And he's coming to America. And he's coming to visit his sister in Daytona Beach. And would the Girl Scouts be willing to give their kits to Samuel Rugwa Mumbai, who was the then governor of that area? And so I asked all the girls, and they're like, yes, that's a great idea. And the girls, we had 11 of the girls over the summer, it was in July. So over the middle of the summer, get them up early in the morning. That's hard for teenagers, right? They get up, we all go to Daytona Beach, and the first thing that the governor asks us when he meets us is, would you please come to my country and help the girls learn how to make these things? And I looked at my girls, and I'm like, field trip, Kenya? And they're like, yeah, let's go to Kenya. That's a great idea, And then later on, the parents were like, no, that's not a great idea. You can't take my kid to Africa. But it's okay because we still persevered. So we gave him the kits, and come to find out that his wife had actually said to him before he left to go to Daytona Beach, honey, I have heard that in America, they make these kits that will help our girls stay in school. So while you're there in America, can you try to find these kits so we can have them? Like, I get goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps right now just telling you this story. But it was just like, you know, God had a perfect plan. They were made for those girls in Kenya. So the governor goes back to Kenya, brings the kits. He couldn't fit all of them in his luggage, but he got at least 76 of them. And the reason I know that is because we got thank you notes. So we basically had finished off the school year. We finished our mission sisterhood journey. Oh, the girls, by the way, named it Mission Possible. Keep girls in school, period. So when you come to our sewing center, you'll see that sign because we trace our roots back to this Girl Scout project. It was awesome. So we get these thank you notes in the fall, like in September when the girls go back to school. And I actually sat and read all of them in a row with a box of tissues. Like, my face was just streaming in tears. I was like, oh my God, we made such a difference in these girls' lives. And they were just chatty, friendly letters from girls who were like 12, 14, 16, kind of responding to the letters that my girls had put into the kits too. And so, yeah, Pamela, I'm good. Okay, I'm good. You just drop it there. She's bringing me a drink, but I think I can make it through. Yeah, you can cut that part out. So, so we get all these beautiful thank you letters from the girls in Kenya. And they're writing things like, my friends have all dropped out of school because they didn't have what they needed. I thank you so much for thinking of us. You've never been through this kind of a difficulty, and yet you cared enough to send these to us. I've been using the stuffing out of my mattress. I've been using old rags. It's not been working. I've been missing school. But now that I have this kit, I can go to school. So we had made such an impact on these young ladies. So I gave the letters, I made copies of the letters so that I always would have, you know, copies, and I gave the girls the originals so that they would have it as a souvenir, like, you did something really amazing. It turns out a few weeks later, a few months later, the governor's brother-in-law went to go visit, and he was told, do not bring any clothing or anything in your suitcase except those kits. They are so important. You can wear your relatives' clothes when you get to Kenya, but you got to bring the rest of the kits. So they all eventually made it out there. So here we are. He had met the governor. He invited us to come to Kenya, and there were some different obstacles and delays and stuff, but eventually 18 months later, so this is like Christmas time of 2015, Darlene and I managed to go to Kenya with our 3 daughters, who were all Girl Scouts at the time, and we had 4 other adults come with us. And we were treated so well. The governor sent 5 vehicles to pick us up. We had 20 suitcases with us, so it was a lot of things to carry and to juggle, pickup trucks and everything. Where we were going was 4 hours away. So up in Tarakaniti is 4 hours from Nairobi, and we just had a magnificent time. So we set up a whole sewing factory. We had 20 women that were learning how to make all of these things, and this predates Days for Girls having criteria and a plan for creating enterprises in other countries. So we were, before they had, now is a lot of application process and approval and training and stuff, but they didn't have that back then in 2015, so we were doing this. So we trained a group of women how to do this on treadle machines. Some were treadle machines. We had some electricity in the space that we were using, and it was just, an incredible thing. Christmas Eve dinner was at the governor's country house, which was really cool, the 9 of us coming for dinner. And then the next day was Christmas, and on Christmas Day, when most people, this was mostly a Christian nation, I believe, most people would be home with their family, we had over 200 people show up at the school that had received those original kits. The school is called the Giampampo School, and they put on a program. They put on a feast, they put on a program, they put on entertainment to thank us for what we were doing. So we had Christmas of 2015 with the governor and his wife and the Giampampo School and all of the family members and everything. And everybody's getting up giving speeches. Wow, this has made such a difference. The most impactful speeches, there was 2 in particular. One was a young lady named Dual Kit, that we actually have a picture of her receiving her kit when she was in 8th grade, and now she was starting 10th grade. And she gets up and she says, we're so grateful to our First Lady, because basically Lucy was the one distributing the kits that her husband had brought from America. And we're so grateful to the First Lady for having brought us these kits. Now we can go to school every day, and we were feeling like people were prejudiced against us. We did not always have what we needed, and so we'd have to take the stuffing out of our mattress, and everybody kind of snickers, like this is the best kept secret. Like I don't know what happens to your mattress if you keep taking the stuffing out to use as a sanitary napkin. You will eventually be laying on the ground, right? So anyway, she's going on like that, and I'm just so amazed that a girl of 15 years old could stand up with a microphone in front of 200 people, adults, males, everybody's there, and talk about her periods and stuff. So it was really an amazing thing. I think she's a future governor of Kenya at some point, I hope. The headmaster got up and did a talk too from the Giampampo school, and he said, now everything has turned around for the girls. They used to come to school it's hopeless. Why bother trying? I know I'm going to miss a week every month. I might as well just drop out now. What's the point? To now they have self-confidence. They're like, I can plan for a future. I can get my high school diploma. I can move on. I can get higher education. I can have a career. I can achieve my goals. Actually, one of the girls that wrote us a letter, this is my favorite quote, and I'll try not to tear up too much, but I would like to become a surgeon and help people like you are doing. Broke my heart. Anyway, so these girls now have that opportunity. And the headmaster also reported to us for the first time ever in the history of the Giampampo school, number 1 and number 3 on the final exams were girls. No girls were missing school. They were going to school, they were getting an education, and they were doing well. So, wow, what an impact. So that day was just like the best day of my life, probably. My daughter took a picture of me, and she said, Mom, I've never seen you so happy. It was really awesome. So, okay. So the Chuka drama dancers come out to entertain us, and they're banging on drums, and they're dressed in traditional African Kenyan clothing, and it was just really exciting. And I'm kind of, if you know me now, I'm like the Energizer Bunny, at least I was, like very energetic and excited. So I'm just sitting there, and I'm just kind of bouncing around, and then all of a sudden they go like this to me. And I jump out of my seat, and I jump in, and I start dancing around with them, and they gave me a drum to bang on, which was probably a mistake because I'm not very good at that. And they also put this big hat on my head that had all kinds of feathers and things like that, which I didn't know that was an amazing thing that happened. But anyway, I'm just dancing around. Everybody's laughing at me. I'm trying to get everybody else to come up and dance, but nobody else wants to dance. So I'm just dancing, and I'm sure I'm like the most exciting entertainment they've ever had at the Giampampo school, me being just wild and crazy and just so happy. Later on, my daughter had videotaped this whole thing, and took pictures, and we showed it to the brother-in-law that lives in Daytona Beach, and he says, this never happens. A woman never has that hat on their head. This was an incredible honor, yes, that we had done this exciting, wonderful thing in Kenya. So that was just, an awesome trip at the end of 2015. Because what the girls had decided once they got those thank you letters, that we can't stop. This was just the mission sisterhood journey, right? Mission possible, keep girls in school, period. So now they were already working on their next journey, which was the justice journey. They learned about social injustice related to race, religion, and nationality. And we had a field trip to New York City with that one, so that was pretty cool to go to all those museums and everything. But, we had made a huge impact in these girls in Kenya. And the really cool thing was that it got sustained, because that's part of a journey. It should be something sustainable. So in one sense, just 200 girls having Days for Girls kits, that means that they can finish school. That's sustainable right there. But one of the ladies that we trained, her name was Edith, she was working with Winnie, Winnie was the assistant to the governor and also a very dear friend of Lucy, the governor's wife. And it was actually Winnie that had told Lucy about Days for Girls, so that's where that connection was. Like, how in the world did somebody in Kenya know about Days for Girls back in 2015? So Winnie and Edith started producing Days for Girls kits, and 3,700 kits were distributed over the next couple of years because of us teaching them how to do it, which was just amazing. And Winnie would give what they call now the Ambassador of Women's Health, the training, the health training that goes with it. And I'll talk about all of that in a little bit. So I gave you a lot of detail for how this started and how Kenya was started. I'll go briefly over the other places our Days for Girls chapter has gone to and how that all came about. So, came back from Kenya. I'm totally fired up, totally excited about everything. Later on in 2016, I met a woman who had been to Malawi and brought Days for Girls kits. And the ladies all said, wow, this is so cool. Can you please come back and teach us how to do this? So she says to me, we're having a nice chat about Days for Girls, and she says, yeah, I'd really like to go back, but I don't want to go by myself to teach the girls how to do this. And I said, I'll go to Malawi. She said, really, you would do that? You know, because the Ministry of Hope was sponsoring the trip. I said, I'd be willing to do that, but just let me know, where is Malawi? And is it safe? But I said yes first. I want you to know that is my philosophy, is say yes first and then work out the details. So I did. I went home and Googled it, and I found out where Malawi was, and I found out that it's fairly safe. It's kind of southeastern Africa. It's a very small country. And so that trip happened Thanksgiving of 2016. At the time, I was still working full time, so I had to work around what holidays we had to use up my vacation time to go visit other countries. After that, we had, I got to tell you one anecdote in Malawi, though. This is really cool. We trained the African Bible College students how to give the presentation of Days for Girls. It's called the Ambassador of Women's Health. And so they spoke English as well as their native language, which is Chichewa. So they were able to translate it for us, and they could do the presentation in Chichewa. We had also trained a tailor how to make the kits. That was the idea, was that now there was going to be somebody the Ministry of Hope was going to pay. It's not women that sew in Malawi, it's men. So we had this tailor, and he's making all the stuff, but we had brought a bunch of kits to distribute. So we go to this village, maybe an hour and a half away from Lilongwe, and this village was so much better off than a lot of other villages because Ministry of Hope had put 2 wells in that village. There was a horrific drought going on, and if they had not had those wells, they would not have had any food to eat because they had their gardens were being irrigated, and then they had another pump kind of in the middle that they could pump to wash things and fill up buckets and take water to their homes. So anyway, we're doing the distribution. The African Bible College girls are giving out the kits, and they're explaining everything, and I will show you the whole book on what that presentation looks like. And at the end, we're showing everybody, in the middle, the young lady puts on a Days for Girls. There was one lady with leggings on, and she had her chitenje, which is kind of a piece of fabric that they wear like a skirt. So she took off her chitenje, she hung it over the window so no boys could look in, and she puts on the Days for Girls pad and underwear over her leggings, obviously, and starts dancing around the room. And I'm looking at the other people who are bilingual, and I'm like, what is she doing? Oh, she's showing the girls, not only can you walk, but you can jump, you can dance, you can play sports. This is not going to slip, this is not going to leak. And everybody's laughing, and they're really happy, and they're so excited about getting their kits. So then we hand out the kits, and they're showing what's inside. So here is your washcloth, yay, here's your shields, yay, here's your liners, yay, here's your bar of soap, yay, here's your 2 pairs of panties. Oh my gosh, it was like thunderous. It was like these girls had just won the lottery. They were yelling and screaming and shouting and clapping. They were so excited because they're going to get underpants. Whoa, that's check your privilege here in America, right? So that was a couple anecdotes from Malawi. So right before Malawi, we had sent some kits with a fellow named Pablo who was in Miami visiting his mother, but he was from Peru. And I took Spanish in grades 5 through 10 in high school, and I'm 60 years old now. So somehow or another, I remembered enough Spanish, and I'm writing a letter in my broken Spanish to the people in Peru, like, hey, here we are. We're sending you these kits. I hope these are helpful in your, helping women who need to be able to either work or go to school or just go on with their life. If you ever want us to come and teach you how to do this, we'll be happy to do it. And I'm writing this in Spanish, right? Well, who would have guessed that a week after these ladies get the kits in Lima, Peru, they've taken one apart, they've figured out how to do it themselves, they're trying to make their own, and I get a phone call from Pablo. The ladies really want you to come. Can you come like in January? This was November, right? It's like 2 days before the trip to Malawi. We're getting invited to go to Peru in January. So Darlene and I look at our calendars. Okay, Martin Luther King's birthday weekend. We have an extra day off. Let's do it. We went down to Peru, and we were able to help. And we also got to do a distribution in 3 different slums right outside of Lima. And boy, there was definitely need there. I think we were one of the first groups going into South America. I was able to arrange for Celeste Mergens, who's the founder of Days for Girls, to go and speak at an international conference in Peru a few months later. So that was really exciting. So we got to go to Peru in January of 2017. That summer, Darlene's daughter, Joni, had an internship in Assam, India. I didn't even know that India went beyond Bangladesh, but it does. There's a piece of India on the eastern side of Bangladesh, and so that's where Joni was doing her internship in the Parijata Academy in Assam. So she gets there, and she was teaching music and dance. That was the idea, because Joni was, at that time, she was a college student, and this was like her summer internship that she was just having fun with, I guess. She's there about 2 weeks, and she calls us up. Mama Radha, Mama, we got to do Days for Girls over here. These girls have already learned how to sew. They have a sewing room all set up because some Australians had come and donated sewing machines, and everything's there. They're really good at sewing, and can you please come and teach Days for Girls? So Darlene and 2 other volunteers went to Assam, and they've actually set up a really nice enterprise in that area. So that was pretty exciting. After that one, I actually went to India after that, and while I was there, I got invited to speak at an international or a national conference in North India. I was in South India, so just the travel. I didn't think about the car sickness when you're going up and down mountains and everything else. Much better to fly in India, just saying. So I got to do that, and I also got to teach a few people about Days for Girls while I was there. And then in March of, what year? 2018. March of 2018, we get invited to Cuba. In between there was Equatorial Guinea. Now, in case you don't know where Equatorial Guinea is, and I certainly did not, I met somebody from there who was speaking in Spanish. I'm assuming Equatorial Guinea must be in South America. And after our trip to Peru, I thought, wow, this is fantastic. We should just go to South America because you don't have to deal with time zones. The plane tickets are so much cheaper. Let's just sort of adopt South America. So I'm talking to this guy in Spanish. Spanish has been helpful, right? And he tells me he's from Equatorial Guinea. I give him a shield and a liner because that's all I had with me, and I just met him like in a really bizarre way. Anyway, he gets back to Equatorial Guinea. In 1 week, he's calling me from Equatorial Guinea on WhatsApp. I guess you can make phone calls. My Spanish is not good enough for people to talk on the phone. I can text it, but I can't really just hear it and comprehend. So he's saying, we really want you. When can you come? When can you come? We couldn't actually go to Equatorial Guinea because they required 4 live vaccines that were going to cost $600, and none of my volunteers were willing to do that. So after a lot of different ideas going back and forth, we said, you know what, we'll sponsor somebody to come here. And we paid for a woman named Isabel to come here. Do you remember when Isabel came, Sherry? Yes. And so with Isabel coming, we were able to have Lupe came also. She was in Wisconsin, and she had her connections in Cuba, so they're kind of all tied in. So between Lupe and Nancy Galloway, they were able to translate and teach, and she learned everything she could as best she could in just a few days, and then we sent her back with 2 suitcases, 100 pounds of supplies so she can get things started. Well, she wound up teaching about 50 people how to do this and starting 2 enterprises in the little country of Equatorial Guinea. And by the way, it is not in South America, it is in Western Africa. It's right near Cameroon. So Cameroon, I guess, was colonized by the French, and Equatorial Guinea was colonized by the Spaniards, and it's the only Spanish-speaking country in Africa. So that's how those countries kind of got into the fray. In March of 2018, we were able to send a few people to Cuba, and now the person who's running that unofficial enterprise is a woman from a church who's now been to most of the counties in Cuba, and we've kind of have an ongoing relationship. Remember, Florida is only like 90 miles from Cuba, so the flights are cheap, it's quick, you can go for like a 3-day weekend and bring things and help them out. They are so fired up, they're working so hard, and it's exciting. But being a communist country, they can't actually start a business, so they're doing it more like a charity thing. Just so you know, in Cuba, you get a voucher for your sanitary napkins. Once a year you come in, they give you 120 disposable sanitary napkins, if they have them. If they don't have them, then you come back the next year and hope that they do. So it is a big, big issue. Menstrual hygiene management is a really big issue. So I think I will show you what's in a kit, and then I'm going to tell you about local distribution. So this is what a Days for Girls International Hygiene Kit looks like. And girls around the world can wear it to school like it's a little backpack. And we are now on the 29th version, but I'm showing you the 28th version here. I don't have the 29th version. This is the version that still has Ziploc bags, which starting in about 2 months, we're going to be not using Ziploc bags anymore because 7 countries have already banned single-use plastic bags, including Kenya, Malawi, Vanuatu, a bunch of different countries, and that's kind of the wave of the future. So, but right now I'll show you the one that's still in the Ziploc bag. So that's what's inside of it here. And I'll have to open this up. We give every kid gets a little bar of soap. So if you are going on a vacation and you're staying in a hotel, here's your strategy. You bring your own soap. Every day you take the little bar of soap that's in the package, put it in your suitcase, and your housekeeper will give you more. So, and at the end you can even ask for more if you want. Bring them to us because we're going to use them for the samples. So this is a shield and a liner here. This is the shield right here, and this will, if you look at the back here, we have little snaps, and that will snap around the crotch of your underwear. So we have 2 pockets here, and we take the liner, which I'm going to show you right here. This is the liner. You can see it's got a double layer in the middle. That's called the hot zone over here. And you can also maybe see that there's some serging going on there, and that was something the girls were not able to do until we eventually got a serger. So we fold it like this, so that hot zone is in the middle, and then we flip it over this way so that we can put it inside of the shield like this. So I have to look at it to do it, sorry guys. Put the thin ends go into the pocket, the thicker part is in the middle, and now you have 6 layers of flannel to absorb menstrual blood, or you could stack them on top of each other. If you can put 2 or 3 of them is 18 layers of flannel. You are not going to leak. You know, you can just throughout the day take out the liner, keep the shield in there. At the end of the day you wash it. So the full kit is going to have 2 shields and 8 liners. You may notice that we're using all kinds of pretty colors and busy patterns. The very first version of the kit was done in white, right? Because in America, disposable pads are white. So why not make them white? Because if you have to wash this thing and hang it on the clothesline, everybody's gonna know what it is with all those stains on it. So that's why we use fabrics that don't show stains. We give everybody a washcloth, and there's the 2 panties. This one is girl size 14. That's about the smallest that we ever do internationally, unless we're sending kits to like Nepal or Thailand, where they can go down to like a girl size 10 or 8 or 10. So inside of each kit there's a card, the care and use card, and it tells you how to wash it, how to fold it, how to hang it in the sun, all of that. And on the back is a little chart, so you can mark down, I had my period on January 15th, the next one should be due, and you start keeping track like that. So that's what goes inside of the kit. And we don't just give these kits out to people with no instruction and no education. There is a beautiful program called the Ambassador of Women's Health. This is the presentation. So basically think of this as a PowerPoint without electricity. Many places we go to do not have electricity, so you can just hold up this book and show it to people. So look, women spend 3,000 days of their lives having periods. That's like 8.5 years. You got to have a plan. You can't just wing it. And what's really nice about this presentation, you got the nice color pictures on the back. It's kind of like a cheat sheet. And any woman can be trained to give this presentation by going online to daysforgirls.org, and it's called the Ambassador of Women's Health Training. There is a male version as well called Men Who Know, and it's a great option for, especially if you're going to talk to like a classroom of girls and boys. Take the girls in one room, the boys in the other room. They can ask their questions, and it's really nice. I'm not going to go through the whole presentation, but it goes through puberty. It goes through all the different body parts. You got your girl parts, and you got your boy parts, and then you got where babies come from, and it goes on and on like that. But let me show you the end. There's a lot of detailed information about how the menstrual cycle works. And let me just one more page and I'll show you the last 4 things. There's a section on washing hands and cleanliness, which is important so we don't spread germs, and sexually transmitted infections, information about that, different ways to prevent getting sexually transmitted infections. Whew, I'm gonna get one more page here. This is everybody's favorite part when you have a bunch of girls in the room and you teach them about self-defense. And the gist of it is we are going to connect your strong body parts with your attacker's weaker body parts. The goal being to stun and run, not to kill the guy or anything, but just to get away and get safe. And then the last slide, I guess you could call in our PowerPoint here, is on human trafficking. So that's basically the Ambassador Women's Health presentation, and the Men Who Know has some similar parts to it, but also has other things as well. Okay, that's what we were doing internationally. So we had an epiphany in 2014 actually. We had a thought that didn't actually get to be acted upon until 2017. So what happened in 2014 when we were holding all of these sew-a-thons, and we do it at a library or a church or some kind of public place, but the library was great in Alachua. People would just kind of wander in and they'd say, what are you doing? What's this all about? How can I help? We had one mom come in with her teenage daughters, and her girls just kind of merged in with the rest of my Girl Scout troop, and the mom is sitting and talking with us, and she said, oh, wow, girls miss school around the world for not having menstrual supplies. Well, there's been times when my girls have had to miss school right in Alachua, Florida, because they did not have enough money to buy sanitary napkins to get their daughters to school. Now, of course, if you start your period in school, you can go to the nurse's office. They should have pads available. That's one thing. But what if you get it on Saturday or Sunday, and then you can't get to school on Monday because you don't have what you need? So that was our aha moment, that this is not just for like the poor people in Africa. This is for anybody, everybody. And now there's actually a term on social media called period poverty. And there's a big movement related to this, that we should give out free sanitary napkins, or we should get people using menstrual cups or washable items. So in 2017, we set 2 goals. We were still doing sew-a-thons. We probably had done like 30 of them, where you got to load the car with all the sewing machines and all the fabric and all the supplies, and you go set it up for a one-day event that maybe lasts for 6 hours, because we could, it's like so physically demanding to get it all set up and take it all down and put it away. And at this point, we had gotten a storage unit donated, thank you Lord, because this was too much in my house. I had sewing machines in my bedroom. I had boxes of fabric everywhere. It was crazy, and I was in a tiny apartment. So we set 2 goals in 2017. We need a place, and we need to start local distribution. We don't want to just be helping the people on other parts of the world. We need to help our local women and girls. So in 2017, in April, we were having a sew-a-thon in Williston. And Williston is kind of a small town. We were in a church. This is after the college students have left, so it wasn't really well attended, maybe 20 or 30 people at most. And a woman walks in, and she looks around, and she says, gosh, you guys really need a place, don't you? And I said, uh-huh. And she said, I am the property manager for Ken and Linda McGurn. I think we can come up with a place for you. And the funny thing about that is it happened right after we had finished putting together 35 kits for local distribution. We had partnered with 3 local charities. They were going to help us to distribute them. And so it was just like, whoa, 2017 is going to be our year. So 72 hours later, I get a phone call from the lady. When are you coming to get your keys? Let me give you your rooms. So in May of 2017, we opened up our first Days for Girls International sewing work rooms. And we had 4 tiny, tiny offices with no windows, but hey, this was way better than nothing. And we set it all up really nicely. I would say we scrapbooked the walls. Every wall was covered with pictures from around the world and everything we're doing. And we had one room with sewing machines, and one room for cutting out, and one room for like meetings. When we had sew-a-thons, people would come and we'd set up tables in the hallway because they wouldn't all fit in our sewing center. It was just amazing. We were so grateful. Ken and Linda McGurn sponsored us for 14 months. Did not pay rent, did not pay utilities. They were covering those costs for us. And then the building sold. So I talked to my leadership team. I said, guys, let's take this as a blessing. We need a bigger place anyway. We have outgrown this space. And we moved on. We were very fortunate. By this time, we had the whole Presbyterian women of North Central Florida behind us, helping us. We have a satellite sewing center now in Melrose. We have a Southwest United Methodist Church also holds we call it shear day on Wednesday nights. People come and just cut things out because they don't have machines. And we've just really expanded in a lot of different ways. So last year in July, we had to move. And we were so fortunate to get 3 really big rooms with windows. I love our windows. To get some natural light coming in. And they're high windows, so we can still use the walls for storing things and stuff. So anyway, we now have a wonderful sewing center at Highlands, what used to be Highlands Presbyterian Church, but we do have to pay rent. And, I was like, okay, somehow or another, we're going to get different people to sponsor the rent each month. We'll figure this out, but we got to have a place. I'm just not willing to go putting everything back in storage. So before we even moved in, somebody prepaid the rent for the entire year. Wow, big donation like that. I'm like, thank you. It's anonymous. If you're watching this, thank you. Please just know that that just made a huge difference. So then the next year comes along and we're renewing our lease, and I'm like, okay, I guess we're going to have to figure out what to do. And in the middle of all this, my son had 2 near-death experiences. I was just very distracted. And then I get a phone call from one of the Presbyterian ladies. Guess what? I got us a sponsor for this year too, a different sponsor, anonymous. So this year has been sponsored too. So thank you, whoever you are, these anonymous sponsors who have paid our rent. Just makes life so much easier not to have to worry about that. So we really, really do appreciate that. So for local distribution, we applied for grant money from different places. We Satchels, UF Medical Guild, Assembly for Action, and the Women's Giving Circle, and got all of them. All of them helped to sponsor local distribution. So this last year we just finished, we distributed to 220 local women and girls. That was our goal. We met it on August 31st. We finished it off. And we were just so happy and excited because this money also pays for menstrual cups. Now, women in a developing country who are using a latrine are not going to be real comfortable using a menstrual cup. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Diva cup maybe. It's something that goes inside and fits around the cervix. I don't think I brought a sample in to show. But anyway, it's a great thing to use in a country where you have a bathroom where you can wash your hands and you can wash the cup out and you've got lighting. But if you're in a latrine and it's kind of dark and you have no way to wash your hands, this is not useful. And then culturally too, in cultures where you don't use tampons, a menstrual cup is a far reach. So we were able to offer to these women menstrual cups and or Days for Girls kits, and it's just been amazing. So what we found is that local women, just like women all over the world, are really excited to be able to use these. They save money. Figure $5 or $10 a month is going to be spent on menstrual supplies per female or transgender male in your household. So some people may be wondering, why does this matter? Who cares about girls and periods and all this kind of stuff? Well, number one, 50% of the population have periods and the other 50% get to deal with it. So for girls and women who are not having an opportunity to have a proper education just because their body is doing what their body is supposed to do, which is to menstruate every month, that is absolutely ridiculous. So we are losing half of the brain power of the world and half of the workforce potentially. I mean, imagine if you only get to 6th or 7th grade. What kind of education is that? What kind of career? What can your impacts be? So it makes a huge difference in the world if women and girls, and also this is an interesting study, I can't remember exactly where I saw it, but I've heard about it, is that if you ask a man if you had more income, what top 10 things you would spend it on, most of them are going to be things that are boy toys, things that will make them have a nicer life. If you ask a woman especially who's a mother and say, if you made extra money this month and you could use it for whatever you wanted, what would you do? And most women are going to answer almost all 10, maybe all 10 of those things will be things like, better food for my family, pay for school fees, get school uniforms for my kids, get books, all kinds of things that kind of help the children and the whole community at large. It's just kind of the way women's brains are wired, I guess, not to be stereotypical. But anyway, this is why it matters. We want to make sure that every girl, every woman in the world has the opportunity to fulfill their greatest good, their best potential, so that they can help and serve everybody. So in addition to saving money when you use a Days for Girls reusable washable menstrual kit or a menstrual cup, there's also a big issue that many women are concerned about is trash. I don't know if you know this, but 300 pounds, on average, a woman produces 300 pounds of trash in her lifetime just on menstrual products. And that doesn't talk about when you get older, like, I don't know if anybody else is old enough to know this, but I will admit on camera here that as you get older, your pelvic floor muscles tend to get weaker, and 1 out of 3 women have an incontinence issue. So I used to buy, pads, poise, something, just in case I sneezed or coughed or jumped or something like that. And when I realized I can use a Days for Girls pad for that, oh my gosh. So I don't even know how many hundreds of pounds of trash are created by women using disposable pads for incontinence. So anyway, if you want to reduce how much trash you're producing in your lifetime, you want to use something that's reusable and washable. The other issue is that those pads, the disposable paper pads, are made out of paper that is irritating, and the bleach is also irritating and carcinogenic. Like, who wants bleach paper next to their lady parts? I don't know, bad for you. So that's another reason. And then for many women, especially when you're struggling with poverty or homelessness, just the peace of mind. Okay, my period's due next week and I don't have to worry because I got what I need, is just a really big deal. So those are the reasons women, local women and girls, are really excited to be able to use Days for Girls items. So we are now we go to many different places for homeless women or disadvantaged women or low income women to do these distributions. And this year we've been sponsored by the Women's Giving Circle to help 180 local women and girls to receive their kits. Just to give you some quick numbers here, our Days for Girls, the first year that we had a sewing center, we had about 500 unique volunteers doing about 4,500 hours of work, producing 1,400 kits. And now this year, it's about 50% more. So probably about 700 or 800 unique volunteers doing about, almost like 10,000 hours of volunteer work. We produced 2,200 kits. And what else did we do? We raised money, people give us donations. Yes, please give donations. So if you want to know more about Days for Girls, it's www.daysforgirls.org. You can find us on Facebook, my group, Days for Girls, Alachua, Florida group, Alachua, Florida chapter group on Facebook. So overall, right now, this is the end of 2019, more than 1.5 million women and girls around the world are using Days for Girls kits in 141 countries. That was the latest numbers that they gave us. So let's just keep this ball rolling. Let's keep working on it. If anybody wants to help out, my phone number is 352-316-6113. Might not be able to answer when I'm having surgery, obviously. Might not be able to talk properly, but we'll text. But you can definitely reach our chapter at Alachua FL. That's ALACHUAFL at Days for Girls, DAYSFORGIRLS.org. So you can reach us that way. So even when I'm not going to be available, my co-leader now is Michelle Bellinger, and she will answer your emails and get you situated with helping Days for Girls. So thank you. If you want to throw out any prayers for me, January 6, 2020 is my surgery, and let's just hope we get this tumor out and my voice is still going to go strong. Thank you.